Greetings all, this is Nick and welcome back to the channel. It's time for another tutorial on the X-Wing miniatures game. In this video we're going to talk about squad building, which is the practice of choosing which ships and upgrades you want to fly in a particular game or tournament. I just wanted to take a quick step back from the gameplay and talk about this because this is one of the key things that keeps players really invested in the game. It's something that speaks to a lot of casual and professional players on a very creative level, and one of the most common topics of discussion at your local gaming shop. Now before we dive into this video, I do want to point out, yes, there is very little in the way of actual rules to do with list building, so we'll make sure we cover all of that, but also in the next video I'll do a light primer on the kind of cards you might want to include in your squads. Kind of an introduction into the theory of squad building. Squad building is a very, very in-depth topic, so much so that we actually have a weekly segment on the channel here called The Hangar Bay, where we discuss user-submitted squads and talk about their validity in both a casual and competitive sense. So if you'd like to see those, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And before we dive into the rules, I do want to point out there are apps that can help you with this on either your phone, tablet, or computer. There in fact is an official squad builder app which you can use to build out squads in X-Wing. But having said that, it's not actually my preferred tool for squad building. I prefer yet another squad builder, a browser-based app you can use both on your phone and on your computer. I'll put the links for all of these down in the description. Now, if you're using any of these tools, you don't necessarily have to know everything to do with the legality of putting certain cards on certain ships. The apps will essentially just show you what you can and can't put on a ship. Nevertheless, it is good to understand why you can or cannot fly certain ships or put certain upgrades on those ships. So let's talk about that, the rules in squad building. First up, you need to pick a faction. Now currently, at the time of recording this, we have 7 announced factions in the game of X-Wing. That is Empire, Rebel, Scum, First Order, Resistance, Republic, and CIS. Now don't worry, you really don't have to learn all the ins and outs of what makes all of these factions tick. Indeed, if you're just starting out the game, you probably just have a core set and you only have a few components from only a couple of the factions anyway. If you're interested in learning about faction identity, this is another topic that I do cover on the channel. With the selected faction, you can now choose the ships that you want to fly. The faction symbol is here, near the top on the right hand side of the card. Also, it's important to note that there are some upgrade cards which are also bound to factions, but I'll talk more about those in a tick. A squad can have 2 or more ships in it. Indeed, you can fit as many ships as you possibly can, so long as you don't go over the points limit. The points limit in a standard game of X-Wing is 200 points. Now in the first video in this series I mentioned that the standard game of X-Wing is 200 points. In truth, it is in fact up to 200 points. Every point that you don't spend below 200 goes towards a first player bid. At the start of the game, the player with the squad with the lowest total points gets to choose which player becomes the first player. An important distinction here is the person with the lowest squad points does not automatically become the first player. They get to choose who becomes the first player. Whenever there is a simultaneous game effect during the game, the first player resolves that game effect first. So to access what the ships and upgrade points cost, you're going to need to access one of these squad building tools, like the official squad builder or yet another squad builder. Also, on the X-Wing website, there are PDF documents that have all of the points and breakdowns for all the ships and upgrades. Also, as part of this, you have all of the upgrade slots available to each ship. Each of these small symbols here represents an upgrade the ship can take. For each of these, you can equip onto this ship an upgrade card with the corresponding symbol. You don't have to equip an upgrade for each of these symbols, they're simply the choices you have. In fact, there are plenty of ship builds that work perfectly fine without a single upgrade card. Please note that some upgrade cards have 2 symbols on them. In order to equip this to a ship, you must spend both of those symbols. For example, on a TIE Reaper, you have 2 crew slots. Emperor Palpatine has 2 crew symbols on his upgrade card, so when equipping him to the TIE Reaper, you can use no other crew cards on this platform. The various types of upgrades are meant to represent different kinds of functions on various ships. Usually you can tell roughly what a ship is trying to achieve on the battlefield just by the kind of upgrade slots it has. As I go through all the gameplay mechanics in later videos, all of these will be explained bit by bit, but there's simply a bit too much info here to put into this video, so I'll leave this topic for now. In addition to that symbol on the left hand side of the card that informs you what upgrade slot this card occupies, you also have this little white box here here. And in this box are any additional requirements that the upgrade card needs in order to be equipped. Now this can range from a lot of things. It may have, for example, a certain faction that it can be equipped to. Unique characters all have a faction association and therefore can only be equipped with one faction. For example, you can't chuck the Luke Skywalker Gunner card in your Imperial Decimator. It just doesn't make any sense. Also here you might have a ship size, small, medium or large, or here you might have a specific action on the action bar required in order to be able to take this upgrade card. The action bar is located here on the left hand side of the pilot card. Also, just to make things a little bit more complicated, sometimes upgrade cards actually add additional actions onto your action bar, and this allows you to in turn take other upgrade cards that may require that action. For example, you may have the pilot Crassus Trellix. He wants to take the Saturation Salvo Talent. This requires a reload action. What he is capable of doing is taking the Andrasta Firespray title. This gives you the reload action on his action bar. You can then, in turn, equip him with Saturation Salvo. Some upgrade cards can also add additional upgrade slots. And again, be mindful of this. This also adds a bit of squad building potential to a certain platform. This kind of effect is commonly associated with titles, as it represents some kind of custom-built version of this ship that has better combat efficiency than other versions of it. Like, for example, Slave 1 or Havoc. Slave 1 provides a fire spray platform with a torpedo slot, and Havoc provides a Skurg bomber with an astromech and sensor slot. But be careful because Havoc also removes the crew slot. One last note on the kind of pilots and upgrades you can take in your squad. Some of these cards are unique, denoted by this small dot next to the card name. This usually represents a unique character either in the pilot or crew slot. This simply means you can only include one of this card name in your squad. And be very careful because there are several examples of characters which appear both on pilot cards and crew cards. You can only ever take one of these, if any. Please note that for official play, you will require copies of all the upgrade and pilot cards that you equip in your squad, as well as all of the minis and ship templates associated with those pilots. Now, thankfully, the various squad building tools, such as yet another Squad Builder 2.0 that you can see on the screen in front of you, has a section here on the page called Your Collection. What you can do here is you can manually add all the expansion packs that you have, and it in turn will make sure that whenever you go to build a list, it will warn you if you're using any upgrade or pilot cards that you don't have. This is extremely useful and will help you avoid scenarios where you can't take your list to a certain tournament. Because, for example, you equipped one too many Y-Wings that you didn't have the cards for. When you're setting up your game, you put your cards on the table like so, with the pilot card on top of all of the upgrade cards, and slipping those upgrade cards, concealing the left-hand side of the card in sequence below the pilot card, and then all the other upgrade cards, as you can see right here in front of you. Once you've assembled all the cards you'll need to fill out your squad, you're also going to need to bring along all the tokens associated with the abilities that your ships can take. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, there are simply too many listed in this video, but as a general rule, make sure that if your ships have any of the following actions on their action bar, you bring at least one of the corresponding tokens. This is the target lock action, focus, evade, reinforce, and calculate tokens primarily. Make sure you have one of these for each of the ships that can take them. Also, you're going to need a few of these red tokens. These are stress tokens for all of your ships as well. And just to reiterate, it's very easy to accidentally forget to take one of these tokens to a tournament. And as such, I recommend you get yourself some kind of compartmentalized case where you can carry these around. You don't need anything large. This sewing case that I use, for example, works great, and you can take it along to all the tournaments that you go to, meaning that even if you don't have your tokens ready to go in your squad, you still have access to all the spare ones you have, just to make sure that you don't miss out on anything. And just before we wrap up all the rules associated with squad building, I do want to talk about that first player bid one more time, because now we have an understanding of how you pick cards and upgrades. There is still that factor of how expensive you want to make your squad. As a general rule, there are certain types of squads that definitely want to make sure that they get to choose who goes first. In general, this is lists with higher initiative pilots, usually what we'd call aces. If you have even one ship on your squad that has initiative 6, the highest possible initiative a ship can have, you generally want to make sure that you have a decent bid. In other words, you haven't quite spent 200 points. You've left some points clear to make sure that you're often the player who has taken the cheapest squad to the table, and you get to choose who goes first. This is for the simple reason that making sure that this ship flies last is very, very crucial to your game strategy. Let me show you an example of how this might play out. In front of us is an example of two different lists that definitely want to make sure that they fly their ships last. One of them includes Boba Fett and Fen Rao, and the other one includes Sunterfell and Darth Vader. In this example, the Imperial player has built a squad that has the fewer total squad points. As such, at the start of the game, he has elected to give his opponent the first player token, and now he has forced Fen Rao to fly before Sunterfell and Vader. We'll talk more about this when we do our video on movement, but this is also a very important factor when squad building. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Stay tuned. The next video will be a light primer on the kind of parts upgrade cards you might want to take in a squad. A huge thank you to all of my patrons. If you'd like to get involved with the Patreon, the link for that is down below. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.